Thank you everyone for joining us during your lunch hour to talk about what the EDI committee can do for you.
Hold on just a second, Corinne. We don't have any attendees quite yet.
Oh, okay.
I think they'll probably come on in. So we can probably get started around 12 or 12:01.
Oh, sorry. I guess I just didn't look at the time.
You're fine. I just wanted to let, by my going 3, 2, 1, I wanted to make sure you knew we were
Okay. You can still see my screen though, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll get started in 1 minute. Thank you, everyone. Please note that this session is being recorded, and Corinne, take it away whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Amy, and thank you everyone for joining us during your lunch hour to talk about what the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee can do for you. This session qualifies for 1 CM credit, so please make sure to log that information if you're AICP. The course number is 923-2010. And as Amy mentioned, this session is being recorded. So just a few items that we'll go over today. It is very interactive, so please do not hesitate to leave comments in the chat or raise your hand. And just as a reminder, I'm sure we're all aware, but please stay on mute if you aren't speaking. As always, be respectful and listen to other participants. And if you haven't already done so, please update your name. So here is what we will go over on today's session. So we're going to start with some introductions. We have our co-chair of the EDI committee, Roxanne Reed, here to give a few remarks. We will go over what the APA EDI committee is, go over some initiatives, some projects and priorities, and then we'll really end with an open discussion. So please be prepared to take it all in and then share with us your thoughts and ideas at the end. So like I said, we have our co-chair, Roxanne Reed, here today to provide some welcoming remarks. Roxanne, take it away. Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry, I'm so used to just being able to talk. So thank you, Corinne. I'd like to welcome you all here today Inclusion Committee. And I currently serve as a co-chair along with Bob Cambridge, as you can see here on the screen. This committee was started in August of 2019 by Andre Anderson and Alyssa Barber-Torres as a response to social injustices that were coming to light in books that were coming out at that time, such as The Color of Law and Race for Profit. And then the killing of George Floyd in May of 2020 magnified and intensified the need for an EDI committee within APA Florida. Over these past 3 years, sometimes it feels like we've all lived a lifetime. So much has happened, and there have been so many changes in our lives. And we're all here on this committee, and those of you who are interested, for a variety of reasons. Some of the reasons that we're here is because of the race relations that we see happening in our society. Some of us are here because of the disability community and our affiliation with that. Some of us are here because our affiliations and involvement with the LGBTQ community, the Asian American community, the Jewish community, the Latinx community, the aging community, and there are just a variety of others that illustrate the importance to us of diversity and inclusion. The work we do on this committee is hard work. If it was easy, everyone would do it. But you can see that we're a small committee, and that's why we're looking for more members to help us with this work. On our committee meetings over the last 3 years, we've had some hard conversations about how we would engage in this work and process this work. But we know, as we've formed this committee over the last 3 years, that we are never alone. Those of us who are allies to these communities, sometimes we have paved the way. Sometimes we've stood beside each other, and there are sometimes when we've had each other's backs. We live in a time now where we see laws being made to restrict our freedom of being able to talk about these things in our workplace and in our schools. We've seen books being banned, and we know what happens when books are banned. Sometimes they become even more popular, so that can be definitely to our advantage. I just wanted to let you know that this work isn't for everyone. We've had people who have become interested in this committee and have had to leave the committee for a variety of reasons, and that's fine. We understand everybody's situation in their personal lives and in their work lives. There's no blame and no shame in how you approach this committee and how you interact with it. So we totally understand the situations that you all face. But I will tell you one thing, if you join the committee and you engage in this hard work that we do, you will be changed. I would just like to tell you a personal story of how I've been changed through being involved with this committee. I became involved initially just because of the disability community. I have a 30-year-old son who has autism, and we have supported him since day one, since we realized that this was the case. So it's been 30 long years of supporting him to reach his full potential. And there has been fits and starts, and we've had times where we have gone forward and then we've taken 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and vice versa. But now he's in a really good place, and it's because we just put everything behind what we were doing for him. And that's the hard work that I talk about in this committee. And with that hard work comes the reward. And I find that so parallel to our experiences in the disability community. When you put your all into it and you put that hard work in, you get the most rewarding things back from doing those things. You see where you've enriched another person's life. And I think that is the backdrop that I hope you all take from what the presenters will say today, and take that forward and really make a decision on this, if this is something you really want to do. And I hope that you all find this as interesting and as rewarding work as I have. So I'm going to turn it over to the presenters, and I wish you all luck.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. We really appreciate you coming here and telling us about your experience. Before we get into introducing the presenters, I just want to touch on the mission statement of the EDI committee. I won't go through all of it, but I do just want to highlight the last line because I think it really highlights what Roxanne has been talking about. We want to engage people of all backgrounds and experiences and seek to foster a culture of respect, openness, learning, integrity, honesty, and a sense of fun. And I think that we as committee members really take that to heart. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers, and we're going to start with Amy.
Thanks so much, Corinne. It's a pleasure to be here today. So my name's Amy Elmore. I'm the Communications and Outreach Manager for Forward Pinellas, and I am one of the newest members of the EDI Committee. I just joined back in January of this year. I have over 10 years of communications experience and really a passion for equitable outreach and communications. So the subcommittee for the social media and websites, as well as some of the events planning, has kind of really been what I've leaned to. And I really love the fact that the EDI committee has been able to find a place where I can use my strengths and really enjoy the work that I'm able to do. So it's very rewarding.
Thanks, Amy. Next, Lindsay.
Hey everyone, my name is Lindsay Slaughterback. I'm a transportation planner at Kimley-Horn in Tallahassee. I've been working in planning for a little over 4 years. I was doing something else before that. I was working in the Peace Corps, which I think could probably count as planning, but we'll go for. I am the co-chair of our EDI Committee's Conference and Events Subcommittee, and I work closely with our co-chair, Bob. So thank you for all coming today.
Thanks, Lindsay. And lastly, my name is Corinne Ariaga. I'm a transportation planner at the City of Sarasota. I have over 5 years of planning experience in the public sector. Untraditionally, I have a master's in public health, and I'm the co-chair of the EDI Committee's Communities and Partnerships Subcommittee. And a little bit about me is I am a Jewish German American. So this committee is very important to me and how we can really elevate all voices from all different backgrounds and create a sense of place that is inclusive to everyone. Okay, and so I want to just give a little bit of a brief overview of the EDI committee. You can see, like Roxanne was saying, we are small but strong. We have 22 members, which actually increased by 2 over the past year. We do represent 9 out of the 12 APA sections. Like you can see here, we have 5 different subcommittees that people can get involved in. And of course, you can always gather more information from the EDI page on the Florida APA's website. And so the link is on here, but I think we'll also be dropping the link in the chat box if you want to go check that out. So now just a little overview about APA Florida's profile. So here is a demographic overview. It's a comparison of the Florida APA membership and the national APA membership. So if you're looking at it, the Florida chapter, their demographics are the top line, and the national is the bottom line. So the data was taken on July 6, 2021, and I think there's just a few interesting takeaways from here. You can see Florida APA has more female, Black or African American, and Hispanic members than national. And next, we want to share with you that before we had that information, the EDI chapter wanted, or the EDI committee wanted to learn a little bit more about their membership. So what happened was there was an EDI specific survey that was sent out in 2020. And this just shows that there was 234 respondents. And really the intent of this survey was to understand the diversity of interests and experiences that are within the Florida chapter of APA. And so our next slide shows the gender and racial composition of the respondents for that survey that was done in 2020 compared to the state of Florida. And I think really here what we just want to show is that we got a really good representation of the membership and of different backgrounds and people with different perspectives. And I think that was really important to us because a lot of the initiatives that this committee does is guided by the responses of that survey. And so to talk more about those initiatives is Amy, and you can take that away.
Thanks so much, Corinne. That was a great overview of that survey. Next. So National APA has continually strived to incorporate equity, diversity, and inclusion since 2017, beginning with their diversity and inclusion strategy. And since then, APA has incorporated many different initiatives requiring equity in our continuing education credits. And most recently, they've updated the APA Code of Ethics to include statements on equity. Next. APA Florida's EDI Committee has really been a leader nationally in this field. We began with the Equity Survey in 2020, which Corinne walked you through a little bit. And our next survey is going to be in 2023. So definitely be watching out for that so you can participate. But we've also developed a resource guide on our website for folks who want to focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion in their daily practices as planners. And the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee has direct influence on all of the chapters, our conferences, events, and even policies that APA Florida supports. Next. The EDI Committee has created several position statements over the past several years that have ultimately been adopted by APA Florida, including statements on righting wrongs of racial inequality, a statement against hate crimes against our AAPI community, and lately, in response to Nazi demonstrations in Florida back in January of this year, we put out a statement against hate crimes against the Jewish community. And most recently, the EDI Committee created a statement against legislation that is against EDI. Next. So this statement that was against the legislation directly led to APA Florida sending in a veto request to Governor DeSantis for the Stop Woke Act, which will essentially make it illegal to require, or in some circumstances even provide, professional development education on equity, diversity, and inclusion, which Roxanne touched on a little bit in her brief introduction. Ultimately, APA Florida's EDI Committee is continually working for all of our members to provide them with resources and opportunities while upholding our code of ethics. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lindsay to discuss our latest projects and priorities.
Thanks, Amy. So I'll talk a little bit about our projects and priorities. So next slide, Corinne. So our EDI priorities are actually based on and influenced by the survey that Corinne and Amy both mentioned. So a lot of the feedback that we got, we tried to shape into an overall strategy for our committee. So you'll see here, these are some of the highlights. If you're interested in the larger strategy, you can find it on that website that Amy posted earlier. But some of them are to ensure that the chapter's legislative platform and standard operating procedures clearly promote and identify leaders, to survey the composition of the APA Florida boards biannually. That includes the executive committee, chapter committees, and section boards. Conducting chapter equity, diversity, and inclusion survey every 3 years, which is that survey that we keep mentioning. And then publish the findings and recommendations for chapter membership. And I know that our executive committee is very involved and interested in that data as well. And additionally, working to expand partnerships with organizations and universities. So next slide. And so those priorities directly influence some of our projects and initiatives. Here on this slide are just some of the many things that we've been able to do over the last year and even just in the last few months. Our co-chair, Roxanne, has been working on EDI trainings that have been partially funded by a grant from the Chapter President's Council grant. That was done with committee leadership from January through March of this year, and I believe is completed now, and that will be open to all APA Florida members June 2nd and 3rd. So if you have any other questions about that, please reach out to Roxanne or any of the three of us, and we'll be able to get you more information. We're also offering mentoring options and program support. This is just to explore those experiences of the BIPOC community and planning workplaces as well, and kind of support meaningful conversations and have specific actions to enhance allyship and also just the general experience. Additionally, we have a Lessons from Leaders project that features diverse planning leaders, and we're going to be continuing with that as we continue our work. And something cool that has been happening is that we have our first video with the AAPI community from women directors. That's on our YouTube channel if you're interested. And then we've also been working with sections to develop EDI groups and events. So if you all are section leadership throughout the state, please reach out to us. We would love to support you in an event. We have several events, so just reach out and we can make it work. Next slide, please. So again, for the survey, so all of those priorities and projects and initiatives that I highlighted have to do with the survey. So these are just some of the key points that really reflect what I just was talking about. So I'm not going to read it all to you, but some of the important ones are that 38% feel they have to work harder to be perceived as talented due to identity. 35% would like a mentor, and 60% would like to do some sensitivity training and discussion. So as you can tell by our initiatives and our projects and events, we're thinking about this stuff all the time, and we want to make sure that we are accurately representing the interests of planners throughout Florida. And thank you. I will hand it back to Corinne.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Amy. That was a great overview of our initiatives and our priorities as an EDI committee. And now we're going to really get into the interactive part of this lunch hour session. Because like I think we've all pretty much discussed, the most important part of this committee is hearing from everyone and hearing how we should, what we can do for you, right? What the EDI committee can do for you. So we want to open up the floor, and if you'd like to talk, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. But before we get into, so the first thing we really want to hear from is if you could provide input and suggestions to the EDI committee on what you've heard. So really sharing your thoughts and anything that the EDI committee can do that we should take into consideration.
I will just add, if you would like to either type in your question into the Q&A, into the chat, or if you raise your hand, we'll allow you to speak. And don't worry, we won't put you on the spot to share your video or anything. So I will say one of the first questions that we have, I'll go ahead and get started with that, is from Abby. She said she noticed in the data that we provided that it was pretty eye-opening, and many of our members have 20+ years of experience. So how will the committee address recruitment of the next generation of planners and public involvement officers, ensuring a diverse, inclusive workforce? And I would like to invite Roxanne or Bob to turn your videos back on if you would like to participate in the discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And that is something that we are endeavoring to do as part of our committee, is to really get to the section level. So hopefully all of you that are on this call are part of your sections, and there's local sections under APA Florida. Hopefully you're aware of that. If not, definitely go onto the APA Florida website and check out what your section is and become a part of that, because that's a drive that we are just now starting to try to get down to the section level and make sure that everyone knows about the EDI committee. Because as we mentioned before, this is going to be very limited to talk about at work. And this may be the only vehicle that we have to advance these ideas and the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion in our workplaces is using this committee.
Excellent, Roxanne. And I will say too, we've done the APA Florida has done a fantastic communications review of all of the communications practices. And one of those things is to add some Instagram, which I think will really bring some of that next generation planners into the fold of APA members. And hopefully with that increase of APA members, we'll also see the additional interest in the EDI committee.
And
right. And I wanted to add that we have the LinkedIn group, and that was kind of our first level into social media. So definitely check that out on LinkedIn. It's the APA Florida Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion group. I don't know, Amy may be able to put that up. It looks like it's already up. So we are definitely looking into expanding that. We think we may need to expand our social media presence and get the word out there. So I appreciate that information, Amy.
Yeah, we also have the subcommittee of partnerships and communities where we do keep close contacts with our schools. So I know that Jarrell, he's our co-chair for that subcommittee, and he works really closely with UF and their student planners, as well as the emerging planners group. So we do like to keep in contact with Florida schools like USF and FSU and UCF as well. So we do try to keep our soon-to-be planners pretty connected if we can.
And you know, I'd like to the next bullet point down is to connect and share your experiences. And of course, if anybody does, any of our attendees have any more suggestions about the EDI committee or things that they'd like to learn or they'd like us to provide, please, you know, feel free to raise your hand and let us know. But I'd like to kind of open it up to our panel to begin sharing their experiences a little bit about their passion and why they joined the EDI committee. Roxanne, you talked a little bit about yours, but Corinne, could we start with you? And yes, I'm putting everybody on the spot. They had no idea I was going to ask this.
I know, so now I'm completely unprepared.
Now you gotta think about it.
So why is equity, diversity, and inclusion important to me, and why did I join the committee?
Yeah.
So like I said, so Jarrell recruited me to be part of the Partnerships and Communities Committee because he thought I had a skill set that could help advance that subcommittee. Why? And like I said, so I'm Jewish. I have experiences in not being in the majority in a way. And I think that, sorry, you really put me on the spot. Normally I can get on my soapbox and preach, but right now I'm struggling. But like I was saying earlier, I think it's really important to elevate voices from different backgrounds. It just makes the product and what you're working for better. Because if one person or this item is done in a vacuum with no diversity, then it is not representative and it excludes people without even thinking about them or taking them into consideration. So if you have a room full of all able-bodied people creating policies, planning cities, planning neighborhoods, then people in wheelchairs or people who broke their leg and are using crutches, they're not going to be able to get around. They're not going to be able to access, services or go to, walk in their neighborhood or just be outdoors. And I think that is why it's so important to bring everybody to the table because we all come from different experiences. Like another Jewish person isn't going to have the same experiences that I have. So even having people of the same like race or culture still bring different experiences because their identity and their experience is unique. And so is their perspective. So I think that's why it's so important to have different people get to the table and really advance what we're doing, making sure that this, the state of Florida is equitable, it's diverse, and it's inclusive in everything that it does, including the planning. I want to say industry, but let's go with field.
Yeah, absolutely, Corinne. That's such an important thing. And I know I have always loved the phrase that if we can plan for the most vulnerable users, then we are planning for everyone. And Roxanne, I think I stole that from you. So, you had that at a webinar the other day, and I just thought that was the greatest little soundbite there. Lindsay, I'd like to open it up to you if you'd like to share any of your experiences.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking that question. I had a little inkling that you might ask, because I feel like it is interesting to ask why people care about this, and we all should, obviously. But, I was kind of in 2020, when the survey first came out and the results were revealed, I sat in on this very same forum. And I was very interested in seeing how we could partner as the capital area section with Alyssa and Roxanne. But I had never really thought that there was a place for me on the committee as a just white woman, And so when they invited me to come see it and be a part of it, I was really excited because, a lot of times the inequalities in our country and worldwide, honestly, are kind of overwhelming. And as someone who doesn't necessarily experience discrimination the way many other groups do, it's kind of hard to see how I would fit into this and be supportive and an ally in the correct way. So I think that this committee has really done a great job in educating me and showing me the way to be supportive and not necessarily be front and center or the most important person in the room, which is obviously not the point. So yeah, it has been awesome. Like, we've done so many great events, and it's definitely been cool to have a really great understanding of what planners in Florida and from a variety of backgrounds and races, genders, all of that are interested in seeing and how we can support them.
Fantastic. That's really exciting to hear that you actually started your EDI journey with one of these forums. So that's so neat. Hopefully you won't be the only one. I have a feeling today some of our attendees will also join us. So that would be wonderful. And
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Here we go. So, and I will share my experiences too. Basically, I am lesbian. I have been married to my wife for 11 years. And since coming out back in college, all the fun time of college, when I have been with other women and that sort of thing, I've been run off the road with people screaming hateful things at me because I've got a gay pride flag on my bumper sticker on my car or something. I have been turned away from restaurants. I have been turned away from just different stores saying, we don't want your kind. And so that's been really eye-opening to me, because I have always just thought, well, I've got to do something. I've got to do something to help other people who were going through any kind of prejudice. And when I learned about the EDI committee, I said that that's what I can do. That's what I can do to help, is join this EDI committee and help these different initiatives succeed, whether that's working through our code of ethics or helping to create position statements from a policy front, or just putting on a forum like this. That's how I can spread the word. And maybe if I can just change one mind, then it's all worth it. So that's why I joined, and I'm so passionate about it. Roxanne, is there anything else you wanted to say to wrap this question up?
It is so valuable, I think, to hear everybody's stories and why they are interested in this committee. I've learned a lot just listening from the three of you and the experiences that you've had. My experience, of course, is different. My son has that invisible disability that when you look at him, you can't tell that there's a disability there. And so that's posed its own challenges as we've gone through life. We've had during his school years, we've had teachers say, I don't want him in my class. And then we've had to figure out what to do. And there were times when I just had to pull him out of school and homeschool him myself, so he would learn those basics that the teacher said he would never learn. And I think I left this out in my introduction, but the place we are at now, the place where we always wanted him to be, was working. We knew that he would never be able to go to college and earn a degree, but we knew he could work. So we did put all of our efforts toward him working. And he's worked very successfully over the last 5 to 6 years. And in December, he was able to work full-time. And now he works full-time for the Disney company, and he absolutely loves it. He works at Magic Kingdom. He works in a restaurant where they treat him wonderfully. He works in the castle, so he goes around telling everyone, I work in the logo, because the castle is the logo. And everywhere he goes, he sees his workplace. And I'm not sure how many of us would want to see our workplace everywhere we go, but he loves it. And it's that attitude that you really learn from, and you really learn what's most important in life when you're around people that have a different viewpoint. So that has been very successful for us, and it makes us feel like we've gotten there. We want him to keep that job for as long as possible. The other part that has happened that has really added to me being in this committee, my daughter is now engaged. And she has brought the interracial part to our family. My daughter's engaged to a Black man, but he is wonderful. He is absolutely wonderful to deal with. He was a great help to me in going through the George Floyd killing and processing all of that and what his viewpoint was towards that. So these are kind of the two reasons now that I'm involved in this committee, as I see what African Americans have gone through over these last 400 years, and learning that through reading books like The Color of Law, reading books like Race for Profit, and reading books like Caste, which was very eye-opening. So I do want to just add one little plug. I know we had a question about the EDI training coming up in June. The dates are actually going to be June 1st and 2nd, and that registration will be going out the 1st of May, and we'll get that all already. That is actually going to go out to anybody in Florida who works in the planning profession. And that will also be opened up to those outside of Florida too, because we have about 100 that we can get on the registration. It's going to be a Zoom training, much like this. And it is with Castillo Consulting in LA. And I attended their first a workshop that they did back in December of 2020, and it was wonderful. So I think you will all benefit greatly from that. It comes from a really strong planning perspective and how planning can really work on equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Thank you, Roxanne. That's excellent. And if you'll send me that link, then we can send it out to everybody on this webinar afterwards. And so with that, I'd like to open it up to this panel and anybody in our audience about workplaces and equity within our workplaces and within the planning profession in Florida. Any struggles that we've seen, any ways that COVID has affected our equity practices. Is your workplace diverse and inclusive? What kind of challenges are you having with that? And is there a way that the EDI committee can help? I'll go ahead and open it up. I will say one of our folks is on the attendee panel today. It mentioned, hey, we'd love to have you come and do that EDI training with our entire staff. This is something that the Stop Woke Act that we previously mentioned could actually stop, is these types of trainings within our workplace. So the training that Roxanne mentioned would be fantastic from a volunteer standpoint to see if anybody, we can definitely send that out and see if anyone from your team would like to join. I'll just share a quick story, and then we've got Abby, our caller, who'd like to share some of her struggles in the workplace on equity. But over the past year at Forward Pinellas, we started an equity assessment, which I think several different planning agencies did over this past year or so. And the equity assessment looked at our internal practices and policies to make sure that we were equitable and we were thinking through all of our low income and communities of concern, these minority areas in our community. As we were pushing out information on that, what was really interesting is we had internal staff and external staff. We had this flurry of negativity saying, we don't have racism anymore. Racism is done. Racism isn't impacting us. Racism hasn't impacted us. That's behind us now. So why are we saying anything? And I just thought that was a really, I hadn't ever heard that viewpoint that racism is done. I was very taken back by that. We hope that racism is getting better, but things like a Nazi organization coming and doing different protests and things in Florida just in January is one very small example of how racism is not done. We're still working to not only combat racism here in 2022, but we're also working to change those affected by racism in the past who are still being affected today. So that was just a really interesting challenge that I had to face with my team when we were doing our equity assessment is, how do we answer that question? Are we going to stand up and say, yes, we believe there's racism and we believe that we need to do something about it? Or are we going to back down? And I was very happy that we did end up moving forward with the equity assessment, but it was a long journey and it was challenging. With that, I'd like to open it up to Abby. Abby, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Hello. I don't know if I can I don't really need my camera on, but I'm very lucky. First off, this has been really fantastic hearing from you. Of course, I know some of you personally, but it's been really great just to hear your experiences. And I'm so happy committees like this are now a standard, or hopefully they are in most workplaces. What I wanted to share was less of a personal struggle in our workplace. I feel like I'm very lucky to work for a planning organization that is that recognizes equity in the workplace. And where my experience comes in, I'm our public involvement officer for our transportation planning organization on the Space Coast. And what I have run into, I've been here almost 5 years. And one thing that I always run into when we're trying to be equitable in the planning process, and when it comes to public involvement, I feel like there's been this culture for years that it is a box that gets ticked, so to speak, and making sure, we tick that box and we did our due diligence. And now it's shifting to being intentional. And I think a lot of that has to do sometimes with the workforce that are in these type of roles for a public involvement officer. And I guess my question is, in our area, sometimes some of the comments that I hear back are, our census just doesn't show that. Our data does not reflect the need to go and do A, B, and C. Whereas we're approaching it from the public involvement and community outreach of like, we need to be at their table. We need to be talking to, these communities of concern. So I guess it's more of, I don't even really know if it's a question, but how are we going to continue to address this in certain areas where, the data might not be reflective, but that doesn't mean that these communities don't exist. So I'd love any feedback or guiding words.
That's a really great point, Abby. And as a communications manager over in Pinellas, we see the exact same challenge, exactly the same, kind of thinking through, well, what does the data tell us versus what are we hearing? And I think the two things to point out are that for many of our low income and minority communities, that data is not representative of them. There are some communities that are not counted in the census. there are some people that we're not accounting for. And so I've always said that data is a great part of the story, but it's only the beginning. It's the communities and what we're hearing from those communities that really complete that full picture and that puzzle. So you've got to have both in order to be equitable. At Forward Pinellas, yes, the story is vital. Absolutely, Abby. Thank you. And you know, at Forward Pinellas and some other agencies, the public participation plan, which is the federal legal document for participation for an MPO, can kind of help to drive that that request, that we're not just checking the box and that it's not an afterthought, but it's the first thing we think about. But I'll open it up. I'd love, Roxanne, do you have any thoughts about the EDI committee? I know that there are a lot of resources on our website for these types of things.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to really listen to those stories. Like you said, those stories are not going to be reflected in the data that Amy talked about. And we do have a problem with undercounting and not counting those marginalized communities. So when you hear those stories and you know that they're out there, you definitely need to be engaging those communities. You may have to do it in a very creative way, but it's definitely worth it because their voices are not being heard in that data. And this is really the way to hear their voices. When you find out who are in these communities and where they're at, just make sure that you engage them.
And so I'll weigh in just briefly. So I work with MPO here as well, and we have that same issue where people are constantly questioning our data. Why did you decide to put a bike path here? Who's it for? What's it for? Is it equitable? All of that kind of thing. And I think the way we've kind of combated it is just making sure that all of the information, all of the comments in full are available for the public to view, maybe even ahead of board meetings, committee meetings, just so that even if they're going to continue to call our data into question, we can stand there firmly and say, the data is, this is the data, this is the story, and that is how we came to this conclusion, you know, because at the end of the day, we are the professionals and we, I'm sure, looked into all of the different avenues, and this is the conclusion we came to, you know, so that's kind of my thinking on it.
I'll touch on that briefly too. So I used to work at an MPO, the Sarasota Manatee MPO, and now I work for the city of Sarasota. And I think both are the same for anything. If you, I know that we all figured out we can work from home and we're all going into the digital age full throttle. And don't get me wrong, I'm a millennial. I love technology. I love online. I love Instagram. But there is nothing that is better than going to a community meeting and talking to people face to face. There's nothing better than riding transit and getting transit users' opinion on the topic. Because some of them, I mean, if they're older, I live in, I'm from Sarasota, right? I represent the city of Sarasota. Our population is a lot older than most areas. And I was out there talking to people about a traffic calming request, and someone was like, I don't know how to use my phone. Like, I don't know how to get on there and use this click to fix. How do I do that? Oh, if it's online, I don't want to do that. Can I just have your phone number? And I was like, yeah, you can have my phone number. That's fine, because sometimes that's how you're going to hear from people. And so we can't be afraid for that human connection. And because that is really going to give us what we need, and that's meaningful to the project, to whatever you're working on. That is how I would say gathering meaningful public engagement is by going face to face and talking with people.
I completely agree, Corinne. I think that's both you and Lindsay and Roxanne have, really had some great points. And, the other thing that I remind my planner, some of the planners at our MPO and at our agency, is that in order to get community buy-in, political buy-in, all of these things that have to happen when you're, going through changes in the community, you've got to hear those stories, and you've got to be open to getting the stories on top of the data. The data only tells part of that story. So for me to make sure a politician or a community leader is on board, I need to say, you know what, Mary in this community, who's a single mom with a disabled son, says this, this, and this is how this project would help her, or something like that. And it means so much more when you can really put a face and a name with that type of data to reinforce the data. Makes it really positive. And I think Christina has a really great question. Christina, if it's okay, I'm going to allow you to talk.
Hi, Amy. Yeah, thanks. I had one question. I just wanted to hear some other creative ways that other communities on the call have reached underserved populations. I actually work with Amy at Forward Pinellas, and I'm a project manager, and we are always trying to come up with unique and innovative ways to kind of reach these underserved communities, ensure that their voice is heard throughout the planning process.
It's a really great question, Christina. Thanks so much. Roxanne, could I open it up with you?
I was actually thinking we might have some other people on the call who might want to address it. Some people that have quite a bit of experience with that. So I'm just going to open it up and see if there's anybody else who's got that experience.
Excellent. Please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to talk about how you've reached some underserved communities. And forgive my dog barking in the background. Abby, thanks so much.
Hello again. So I can just speak to some of the things that we've done at the Space Coast CPO. I think we're always looking for new and interesting ways to reach our underserved populations. Something that Corinne mentioned that we've done before is we have taken transit before during our long-range transportation plan. When we had public input, we rode transit to survey our transit riders, because we realized that we actually had like iPads with us for the survey. We would talk with them in case there was a digital divide situation happening. During COVID, and this was like during the actual, like no movement was happening. We had a corridor study happening, a feasibility one in a pretty popular area of our county. And so to reach those about our open virtual meeting, we had flyers put out at our local libraries. So we partner with a lot of our public entities, so our government agencies, our libraries. I'm really fortunate to be in an area that has a public information network, which means I have really good connections with all of our local PIOs at the municipal area. Not every area has that. If you don't, I highly, highly, highly suggest that you make those relationships. They are vital to getting our message out there. And then another thing that we did for Mitten Road, which was our corridor study, we listed places with free Wi-Fi access. If they did not have access to internet at home, where could they maybe attend this virtual meeting? So of course we didn't have an in-person one because it was kind of at the height of COVID. So we made sure that we included an option. And I think we listed like 10 different places along the corridor that they could go and have free Wi-Fi access. It could literally be, maybe libraries weren't open at that time. I can't remember, but the Wawa had Wi-Fi that they could, that they still had an ability to participate. And we've also hosted our open house in conjunction with our transportation improvement program. We've held it at a local library here that is in an underserved area. We've we've partnered with our Realtors Association before to push out information. So it's really trying to like get outside of the box and think about who you could partner with, because that's the thing. Sometimes no one even knows who we are or they think you're transit. And so I had put in the comments, I feel like a big obstacle sometimes is identifying the communities of concern, finding out who the real influencers are in that community. It might be a faith-based leader. It might be, you know, a city councilman, maybe. And then gaining the trust so that they understand who we are and that their voice does matter, and that if they see a problem, it could lead to a study. So I know it's kind of all over the place.
Oh, that's fantastic, Abby. So many really great experiences and tips for that. I think a big struggle for planners was within the COVID pandemic, figuring out how to reach the digital divide, exactly like you were saying. And I love that idea of having a list of places with free Wi-Fi that folks could go. I've also heard of groups who have set up digital tech hubs at libraries or local coffee shops. So there's actually like almost a viewing center kind of thing in case folks don't have access to a computer or a device. So those have been really successful. That was a fantastic idea. I'd also like to open it up. Alyssa mentioned that APA National and others have done some events like the Charlotte 2040 plan with a lot of innovating outreach strategies. Alyssa, if you'd like to talk, you're certainly welcome to. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
Sure, Amy, can you hear me?
I can.
Wonderful. No, I was going to say this. I think Smart Growth America, APA National, and others have covered that Charlotte 2040 plan, because they did some things like create resources to equip ambassadors in the community to do outreach with them, to direct the strategies and do things in partnership, as well as creating different kinds of games, drive-in events, and other things. And I think there was something like 40 different techniques that they deployed as part of that effort. So again, it seems like there's some great takeaways there for folks who want to consider something a little non-traditional, something that reaches across generations and that provides access, you know, for a variety of communities to participate. The other thing I would mention is, of course, I know, you know, many of us have kind of sat through discussions of outreach, you know, on the part of, you know, very well-meaning planners, and they say, well, we included something in Spanish and made it sound like it was just some great thing that they tried, without realizing, of course, that the Title VI requirements for non-discrimination and other related federal guidance require us to reach out to different types of communities and to provide the tools for their meaningful access and participation. So I know in the most recent Florida planning issue, there's an article about that with a lot of links that can provide those tools for people. So we can all be a little more aware of what is not just a great idea, but also our legal obligation for us and our agencies to do. So again, would point people to that, because there's a lot that we can do and should do, and it's helpful to get the resources together by letting people know in our agencies of those obligations.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alyssa. That's wonderful. Looks like we have one of our guests. You should be able to speak now. Like we're having a little bit of trouble unmuting. See if I can work something out. While I'm trying to work this out, Corinne or Lindsay, would you like to add anything to this discussion about some challenges you may have faced in the workplace and how you overcame them from an EDI perspective?
I think I'm good. I mean, I would love to hear more examples from other people of that. So.
Yeah, I would agree with Lindsay. I think it's really important to hear other people's perspective as well. So I'd like to continue to see if other people would like to share. Well, it doesn't, are we still experiencing trouble? It looks like we're running out of some time here. I don't want to take up too many people's lunch hours. I know they have to get back to work. So,
let me try one more time.
Okay.
Well, I'm so sorry that we weren't able to get you talking, but if you'd like to give us any information, please feel free to email us at any time. Let me put our contact info in the chat. And I think we also have our closing slide. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
so please feel free to email us at any time. Corinne, take it away.
Sorry, Amy, it's okay. I was just going to let people know, like we've been talking about, I think everyone really touched on it. There are several ways to keep in touch with us. You can look at the website and see what's new that's happening. You can follow us on LinkedIn, the Florida APA's LinkedIn or their Facebook. There are their handles right there. Or you can join the EDI group on LinkedIn, and that way you can see all the activities that we're up to as a committee. Of course, we want people who are interested to join us to reach out to us. Here's our emails, Amy, mine, and Lindsay's. You can contact any one of us if you didn't feel comfortable sharing something, you can email us. If you think of something later while you're drinking coffee in the morning, 3 days from now, it's okay. If you're, again, interested in joining the EDI committee, you can email any one of us and we're more than happy to work through anything with you. Once again, we would like to thank you so much for joining us today and really participating and sharing your experiences. It's really important to our committee. That's really what drives us, and like Lindsay was saying, forms our strategy and what we prioritize and the initiatives we pursue. With that, I will hand it over to Roxanne if she has any closing remarks.
I just want to thank you all for hanging in there with us today through all the little glitches that we had, but we've had a good participation here and I appreciate hearing all your stories. Like Corinne and Amy both said, if you are interested in joining, send us an email and we will get that process started. All of our committee members are appointed by the APA Florida Executive Committee President. So we just need to have that formality done before we have new committee members join. So just let us know if you're interested or if you have any questions. We'd be happy to talk with you.
All right, thank you so much. Everyone have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.